All right. So good evening. I am Superintendent Keith Lewis, and I am honored tonight to be joined by my staff. I'm going to do some quick introductions. We have Wendy Yankowski, who is our Assistant Director of Inclusive Education. We have Shannon Brown, who is our Assistant Director of Ed Services and will be our moderator this evening. Rami Cronin-Mack, who is our Executive Director of Education Services, and Brian Frazier, who is our Executive Director of Assessments, Grants, and Progress Monitoring. Tonight, we're not unable to be joined by our Human Resources Director, Mr. Joe Girdner, as well as our Executive Director of Inclusive Education, Jeannie Dwyer. Mr. Brown is going to serve as our moderator this evening. This meeting is just an opportunity for our community and our parents to have the opportunity to ask questions of myself and district staff. As always, we don't come with any agenda. It is truly a Q&A for our community, and we will do our best to answer the questions. And if we do not know the answer to something, we will certainly ensure that we get contact information to respond accordingly with accurate information. And so the format tonight is that questions, if you have questions, please type those in the chat box. As I said, Mr. Brown will be monitoring the chat, and he will read the question. I'm aware that you're not able to see the questions on your end or the chat. And so Mr. Brown will read the question, and then the one of us who's ever more appropriate based on our responsibilities will answer those questions to the best of our ability. So without any further ado, the chat is open and we are ready to begin to 7:30.
So to answer the first question, this is for all schools, correct? This is not just a George Wattell or Lake Schools Town Hall, all schools.
Correct, Lisa, this is for all schools. Yep.
This might be a quick one. No questions coming in.
Yeah, we always have awkward silence, you know, we go out to schools and we meet with our staff in communications meeting. When you turn the floor over, there's always that moment of awkward silence. So we'll say that's it. You've got to have questions for us.
Oh, now they're flying in. So I'll do my best here. Are there any plans for modifying the COVID safety protocols if there is a new wave before the end of the school year?
So I would think that obviously would be at the direction if the emergency procedures through the Health and Human Services were to change. Obviously, we would need to think differently. And so kind of what we've done over the last 24 months is we have held tight to the guidance through the Health and Human Services, Carson City Health and Human Services as well. And so, you know, we're knocking on wood, hoping that we don't have to go there. We are seeing almost zero cases, at least reported cases in the district. And so that is good news on our front. So again, we will be adaptable to the situation and to any guidelines that are put in by our local health officials. So hopefully that answered the question.
All right. What are the expectations for principals to communicate to families? Do you want that one, Keith? You want?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously communication is huge. Hopefully I lead as superintendent of the school district and model good communication, because that's certainly my intent. And so obviously that is expectations of principals. Certainly we all know that some are stronger than others, but those are things that that we try to coach if we get concerns that the communication is not great, if there is a lack of information coming out. Certainly those are concerns that we always want to know about so that we can have those appropriate conversations. So I definitely, once again, I think as your superintendent, I try to be as transparent as I possibly can with the information that we can share. And I obviously have the same expectations of staff as well.
Yeah, and as the most recent principal here, I would say I did everything I could to always communicate out to families. So, but breakdowns happen, unfortunately. Can you please address the YouTube video put out by a DCSD librarian stating you are teaching CRT and neutral gender pronouns?
So this is a twofold. The Douglas County School District is not teaching neutral gender pronouns as part of any curriculum. And to my knowledge, that is not occurring. The video that was released by a DCSD librarian, I have, for the record, there are obviously many parts of that aren't completely straightforward. I will just be honest on that front. And so there was originally a 74-minute video, and now there has been a smaller video that was just released recently. The premise of that is that when this individual became librarian, that they have used a book that was allegedly in the library. As I have stated in public comment, that is not fact. That book came into the library through a subscription service that came under the watch of the librarian who has released this video. There are concerns regarding a book. The district is required to teach cultural pedagogy as part of the professional development standards to our teachers. The book that we have utilized in our level 1 does have a chapter that is controversial. When that was brought to our attention, as I had indicated in an October town hall meeting, that we would reach out to staff that have gone through that level 1 training and try to identify if that was more a widespread issue. And I have stated publicly that there were 5 teachers. We had 47 responses. 5 of those expressed at some level concern regarding that material. And we have had conversations within that that book may not be the most appropriate to achieve the goals that we need to do. And so we are looking at that from our professional development standpoint. And I think Ms. Cronin-Mack can tell you that we would anticipate using a different source moving forward because the training is not dependent on that book, nor is anyone coming out of level 1 as teachers being told that they are to teach CRT or that we are training people to teach CRT. I think the thing that I would ask the community is to analyze that video, and he has failed to provide one example of CRT in the classroom. And I understand that people have different views of what CRT is. The umbrella is very broad and getting broader, but you can talk to most DCSD teachers. First of all, most of them were not even aware of what critical race theory is, and are very adamant that they are not being trained. They have not been forced to take a course in CRT in the district. So I know that's a long-winded response, but there are a lot of misinformation circulating in our community. And as always, as superintendent, again, I invite anyone that would like to come into our classrooms and see for themselves. By all means, reach out and we will provide that opportunity, because I believe our teachers deserve that. You know, this is a criticism of our teachers just as much as it is as the district. And we don't have anything to hide and welcome people to come into the schools and see for themselves. So.
All right, next question is, was a threat assessment done for the high school to determine if scanners are necessary? No, there was not a specific threat assessment done for the high school. Myself and one of our SROs attend an annual Safe Schools conference. And at that conference, they talked about the increase in weapons being found in schools. There was a grant opportunity to pay for these weapon scanners. They're pretty unobtrusive. And so we thought that it would be a good thing for our schools to add an added layer of security. So it's not responsive a specific threat.
And I think, again, just to add on to what Shannon said is, you know, if we have the opportunity to implement a non-intrusive deterrent, you know, we understand that certain campuses, Douglas High School would be one of them, that are pretty wide open campuses. While we lock exterior doors, it is to serve more as a deterrent. And we hope that the kids that might be considering that would think twice before doing so. So I do want to echo Shannon is that we have not had a gun on campus. I think I saw a question pop up. We have not had a gun on campus. I would tell you that we have seen a rise on social media of postings of students with guns. And we certainly, even if they're postings and even if they're not necessarily directed specifically, we work very closely with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. We are fortunate here in this county to have 4 amazing SROs that work very diligently to ensure our schools are as safe as possible.
Do you believe that the school board should represent the values of the parents of the county, or that they are always follow the directions of the state?
Well, I think it's both, and I think that some of the arguments being made and directed at the local school board are maybe misguided and should be at the legislative level. A lot of what we, you know, there's a frustration in education regarding the legislative mandates that come down, but legislative mandates are the law, and our school board and your superintendent sign an oath that we will follow the law. And so that doesn't mean that we don't advocate on behalf of Douglas County. But also I think that one thing that sometimes people don't stop to realize is there are a lot of different values. And so whose values are you representing? And I think that's why the school board is intended to be a nonpartisan board. And generally, I mean, I think anyone that says that we don't represent the values of the community, now, not everything we do is everyone going to like or necessarily agree. But I think our school district does generally represent the values of our community and the parents. The problem is there's a lot of different opinions that no matter what the issue is, that we get to navigate as a school district.
So the question regarding bullying in some of our schools and the perception that it might be getting worse, and what are we doing to support them? I know I work directly with some principals, and any bullying brought to their attention needs to be investigated, a report written, and the determinations have to be communicated to the parents of the families involved. We have bully reports that happen. Some of them are founded, some of them are unfounded. Being a formal principal, sometimes parents tell us bullying's going on, but we've never had any reported. So we constantly are working with our leadership of our schools to support them and making them a safe and respectful learning environment. This one wants to start with a sincere thank you. We have been through a tough few years plus, and through all of your leadership, we are very happy to see our schools back to pre-pandemic activity. We appreciate all our DCSD administration personnel throughout the district, what they did for our students and families to get through this challenging time. So. Another parent would ask you to, it doesn't feel like I gave an adequate response to the bullying question.
Well, I think that our district does take bullying very seriously, and there's always two sides to a story, and sometimes what's shared is one side. And when we get into investigations, it's not, there are two sides to the story. And so I disagree that these administrators don't take bullying seriously. I believe that we are required by law, when the word bullying is used, to conduct an investigation. All of those investigations come through the district office and are recorded at the state level. We have to provide a quarterly report, and we have those conversations. So that is my response, in addition to what Mr. Brown has already added.
There's a question that, are any teachers or school staff allowed to carry a weapon on campus? And the answer is, our policy is no. What studies are we relying on that the scanners are safe and effective? We worked with the sheriff's office to have them research the scanners as well. They have a great track record, very low nuisance rate, which means collecting things or triggering on things that aren't weapons. So sorry, mine just bounced on me, my questions. Is there a set plan to deal with physical violence that occurs at school as it appears to be a regular occurrence?
You could take that. And I was going to say that we have seen an increase, certainly, of the I guess I would say the struggle of many of our students throughout the different schools. And during the pandemic, we've had to really do a lot of teaching and reteaching of expected behaviors. So we're always looking for that support from families as well, to remind students that social media might have a role for them, but that really it's the face-to-face interactions that are the most important, and they need some support sometimes on relearning how to communicate with each other, how to work things out, how to problem solve. And so we've been doing a lot of work around that, because we have seen some students coming back to us after our hybrid situation last year and being out of school at the end of 2020 with maybe missing some of the school skills, forgetting about how to interact socially. So there's been a lot of work out of all of our schools with counselors and social workers and teachers helping to train and retrain students on what those expected behaviors are, so we can mitigate some of the other behaviors that we've been seeing.
Acknowledging that teaching is tough and hiring is tough now, can you share what the district is doing to hire teachers and plan for retirements?
Oh, this is definitely a concern, and obviously it's a real concern in the Carson Valley and at Lake Tahoe. As we all know, the cost of living is very high. It's a very difficult place to be able to come in on a teacher salary and be able to afford housing. Mr. Gardner is not with us tonight, and either is Ms. Dwyer, as they are traveling to a job fair. They recently traveled to Northern Colorado, University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. We are excited that two candidates from the job fair are coming out this week with job offers in hand, but obviously, as we would encourage that they come out and look at the area and to make sure this is a good fit for them. And so job fairs is one of them. I will tell you that Douglas County is still a very desirable district for teachers to be in. And so in the normal cycle, so between March and I would say June, we do relatively well in terms of attempting or of filling our positions. Where we struggle is when we get late resignations in the July and August frame. Then obviously that's a whole more difficult situation for us. For years, we have when we hire a teacher out into a grant-funded position, we have to save a position for that person to come back to at the end of the grant. And so we have traditionally hired teachers on a one-year only contract. We've made the decision this year that we're not going to do that because it is problematic to get people to commit to come to a new district if they're only guaranteed a year. And we're obviously seeing enough turnover year to year that we have not been in a situation here in Douglas County for a couple of years where we've had to reduce force. And so that's one measure that we've taken to try to ensure that all of our positions are on a regular reoccurring position. So again, we advertise nationally any of our jobs. When we post them, they go nationally on the website teachers.com. EdJoin is a pretty major job board that we post our openings as well. And we're finding that Indeed, originally Indeed wasn't necessarily a great platform for education, but it's showing to be more and more utilized. And so while it's a little bit more expensive to advertise on that, we're trying to be as creative as we can on that. And so if this question is being asked because you saw our original list had a lot of openings. That was a little bit deceiving because the way our one-year only contracts work is we have to term those at the end of the year, and then we have to advertise those positions for internal transfer opportunities. Once the transfer period ended, then we were able to quickly rehire most of those and fill, I think it was about 16 spots that we were able to just refill with teachers that were already with us. So we're working hard. It's obviously, I would tell you this year, I don't think that we've necessarily seen any more retirements than usual. Probably a few more resignations, I would tell you, that we've seen. And then special ed is always a concern. And the major concern, and the state superintendents are going to be meeting with President Sandoval and the president of UNLV here in the upcoming months to address the preparation programs, because the state of Nevada is just not simply producing enough teachers, and we're just a microcosm of Clark County. They have even more major problems. So hopefully I responded to that.
And that there's the following question asked about the counselor situation at the high school, and I didn't catch if you did, or Whittel, and that's always been posted, and it's been a struggle to fill when someone leaves mid-year, but we're actively trying to fill it.
Yeah, I was going to add just that, just to clarify some information, because the question seemed to indicate that there were more counselors in the Valley than there are at the Lake. At the high school in the Valley, there are 4 counselors at Douglas High School, not 5, and with 1,700 students. I want to also remind our Lake families that we did have a counselor at the beginning of the year who did leave us in October, and so we've been struggling since then, but we do have 2 fabulous counselors from the Valley who go up every week and work with students at George Whittel High School. And then we do have a elementary school counselor, Reggie Bertoloni, who comes up and works with the students at Zephyr Cove Elementary School. And we are constantly looking, and we do think we have some viable candidates for next year. So we know it's a concern, and we are seeking those employees.
Then there was a question that kind of related that about some of the aggression that we're seeing from students in schools and trying to attract more. We are trying to attract more, and we're also in the process of adding to our social worker staffing and trying to get more of them in schools, more schools, more days a week. So we are constantly working with them and administration to address these issues. There was a question about what about, I'm assuming this is to the hiring, what about pay for teachers and paraprofessionals, but it stops at that. So I know, Keith, you might want to address
I'm
it.
gonna make an assumption of what can we do more on pay. I think that's probably where this is going. I mean, obviously, as superintendent, I want to pay our teachers and all of our employees as much as we possibly can within our means. Obviously, we have around a $55 million budget here in DCSD, and about 85% of that goes to salaries and benefits. We are, for those of you that don't know, the state implemented the pupil-centered funding plan. This is our first year of implementation under that plan. And that plan is not favorable to Douglas County. Basically, what's happened in the pupil-centered funding plan is all the local taxes, which used to come directly to Douglas County, now go into a state education fund and then are distributed out equally to across the state. And so money from Douglas County could be going to, well, I shouldn't say could, is going to larger school districts. And what they have done is put Douglas County on what's called a hold harmless. So they are funding us at the same level that we were funded in 2019-20. As the plan is currently written, there are no escalators for cost of living in Douglas County. We all know that Douglas County is one of the most expensive places in the state to live. This funding does not take that into account. It also does not build in any inflationary expenses as well. And so we are obviously very concerned long-term. One of the things of the pandemic in the short term, we are being able to hold our own, and it came up in questions in terms of that we haven't been able to hire some staff. Obviously, we have budgeted for those employees, and so that ends up being underspend. That's what did allow us to give all employees $1,000, just over $1,000 bonus. And we went in the form of a bonus because, again, we're not sure long term in terms of giving a salary increase. Obviously, that escalates over the years, and so we're monitoring that as best we can. And certainly, when we have the ability to give our employees pay raises, the superintendent will do so. And I know we have a board that will support that as well.
All right, we have a special education question. For students receiving special education services, if a school is out for a holiday or a teacher professional day, what's the school district's obligation to make up those missed monthly IEP minutes? What kind of plan is in place to make up time missed for all holidays and professional development days?
That's a great question. I appreciate that you asked. Truly, IEP teams write minutes based on the services a child needs. Most times they write them for a weekly service, but sometimes you'll see them written as a monthly service, and teams will do that intentionally to try to average those, to take those minutes and spread them out over the course of the week or the course of the month. It's intended to make up for times for days where we have like PLCs or professional development. But if we're closed for a week for an Easter break or a winter break, something like that, it wouldn't be expected that teams would be, making up minutes over a holiday break, but they do work on trying to spread the minutes out over the week or over the month. And if you have concerns that your child isn't getting the services they need, I would encourage you to reach out to that special education teacher and the principal of the school, and you always have the right to reconvene an IEP.
Is there a conversation around adding more schools? With the increase in population, I've heard all elementaries are full.
So that we are not increasing population. We have seen a rather steady decline over several years. Just to give you maybe a little bit of perspective, when Miss Cronin Mack was principal of Powell or Pinion Hills Elementary, and I was the elementary PE teacher there, we were just under 600 students out at Pinion Hills. We are currently under 300. And so I say this word very cautiously. Please do not leave this meeting saying that the superintendent said that we are rezoning. But we definitely have, I think last count, we have about 1,500 seats across the district that would be available before we would be at capacity. Now, obviously within the community, growth occurs around different areas. So obviously the ones impacted right now are Minden and GES. There's a lot of development going on in those areas. And we will watch that. But before we ever had to build a school, we would probably look to rezone and get some students back out into the Pinion Hills area and just move some students around. But again, that is not in our plans. Our schools at this point are not at all at capacity, and that would be across the board.
Let's see, is there a plan to expand the gifted and talented program in the Douglas County? I was working with gifted and talented this year, and I know Mrs. Yankowski is now too. We're servicing all students that qualify for the GT program. So if the question is around changing the qualifications and criteria to get in, I don't believe we're looking at doing that. It's another area where it's challenged to find teachers, but we've been covering those services to the very best of our ability. And so far we've thought it's been going well. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, I do want to add a little there is we don't have plans, like Shannon said, to change the criteria for getting into GT. I think that we obviously acknowledge that finding GT teachers is challenging. And so we are having internal discussions on how we might deliver those services differently. And to make sure that we are meeting those needs. And so those are definitely discussions that we're having internally, because we do, we feel like it's something that we need to look at differently if we're going to be in a situation where we're always short GT teachers. So Shannon, this question is I believe it goes back to how can we change the pupil-centered funding plan?
Oh, okay.
Again, I think it's, we've got to talk to our legislature, our local representatives. I will tell you that Assemblyman Wheeler and Senator Settlemeyer did advocate on behalf of Douglas County. So this did not happen as a result of them not fighting for Douglas County. Unfortunately, right now, that bill was brought forward by Clark County, and they had the votes in the legislature to implement it fully at the start of this year.
Do all schools have access to a counselor each day? And not necessarily right now. They're not fully covered, but we're doing our best to get them hired.
And just on that too, and Rami alluded to this already, we've obviously found a lot of value in our social workers as well. And originally social workers were part of a state grant. And when that grant went away, we obviously saw the value and the need for them to put families and students in connection with local supports. And so we brought those positions into our general fund. We currently have 2 additional positions posted, and we are making some changes within our structure and moving them to the teacher license scale, which will compensate them more fairly for being a licensed professional. And we hope that obviously that will increase our ability to be able to find and fill the 2 positions that we currently have open, in between our social workers and our counselors being able to really support our students.
And I just want to add, counselors are a specialty area they are getting more and more difficult to find. And so, right now we do have multiple schools that are sharing counselors because we've not been able to find them. It's not our attempt to cut back. We really have tried to dedicate counselors to every school, but unfortunately, because of the nature of that particular specialty area and the licensure needed, we've not been able to get as many counselors as we'd like. So we'll continue to work towards that.
There's a question, has any thought been given to moving the early out days to Fridays to allow families to more frequently travel for vacations and see family, etc.?
Can you read that again?
Moving the early out days from Mondays to Fridays. If it's been any conversation around it, I don't know of any conversation around it.
No, we have not had conversations around it. In terms of the goal of those professional learning, Mondays are typically a better day to ensure higher attendance than they would be on Fridays. And so there really has not been internal discussion at this point on that. As you know, we previously had them as early or late starts. The general feedback from the community was that late starts are more difficult on families. I think I could tell you that was the truth in my own household. And so we have moved those to the afternoon, which I think has been, I realize that as families, sometimes you think we're out too much. We acknowledge that, but the work that we're doing is important, and we have to provide our teachers time to be able to collaborate with each other in the work that they do.
So there's some clarification on the added lake school days to the calendar for it says fire makeup. Was this required by law? The additional 3 days added to the lake school calendar for the end?
Brian, do you want to answer the calendar question? You want me to?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. There's 3 contingency days that are required by law to be placed at the end of the school year. We were actually able to, with Whittel, place those on Fridays so that we didn't have to disturb graduation, which was already planned out after that point in time.
And, I think that, there's a couple things that fall in is obviously the employee contracts are variety, but for our teachers, they're 185 days. At Zephyr Cove, we missed 10 days of school through smoke, snow, and COVID. And at Whittel, we missed 8, but on a 4-day week, that's equivalent to 12 days. And so in discussion with the school board, in how we wanted to handle that, we felt that 3 makeup days was more than fair. And so that's the decision that we made. Like Brian said, we were conscious of not putting Whittel in a situation where they had to change graduation. And so that's why we went Fridays. But on our calendar, we are required. We always have 3 days on our calendar at the end of the year for those contingency days.
All right, there's a statement. I just wanted to say that I have had 2 of my kids go through DCSD and have witnessed some wonderful teaching throughout their educational years. This district has always done a great job of making learning the priority, and I value that. I trust the district and the teachers completely to do the right thing for our kids. Thank you. Thank you, Sadie.
Shannon, there's a comment that the paras didn't receive the bonus. The paras did receive the bonus. If you do have concerns, whoever this is, I would encourage you to reach out to our payroll and business services just to verify. What we have not done is we have not settled on a contract with Classified. At this point, we have a tentative agreement, but there are some issues behind the scenes, not between the district and the union, but with the union and their affiliate at the state level, that has prevented us from bringing that forward to the board. We do have that tentative agreement in place, and we're just trying to clear up some of that. So classifieds have not received a pay increase, but the bonus went out to all employees. I believe I'm not even sure what the timing was. It was, I believe, at the beginning of the school year.
So there's a comment, kind of a question I've discussed with several teachers about gifted and talented. They stated there's not enough staff to meet the needs. Right now we have, I believe we have all our GT kids covered. We are having to use a full-time sub, but he is a highly qualified teacher. So we're getting it done at this point in time. AA thinks moving days to Fridays is brilliant. Are you saying that the teachers won't attend if they are on Fridays, they're the outs?
So I'm not saying, no, I'm not saying teachers won't attend, but historically, if you look at our absences, we have a higher percentage on Fridays than we would typically on Mondays. I guess that's what I'm saying.
There's a suggestion if the teachers will not attend, we just reduce their pay. So. There was a question I think I missed up here because I think it's around the funding formula and what would happen if we just told the state that we want to be independent. I'm not sure that's a possibility, but Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. I can tell you that $53 million of our $55 million budget come through the state. And so I would tell you, as superintendent, that is probably not a good business decision. And I will now be criticized because I just said it was about money. We do require money to run a school district. And so it is about money in a practicality sense, not that every decision we make is about money, as is often, we are often criticized for.
I don't think we touched on this yet. Sex education is a sensitive curriculum. At what age or grade level is sex education being introduced to our children? And will the parents be shown the full curriculum before it's taught within the classroom? So the new health standards go down to 3rd grade in that area. And they're simply taught the science of their body parts, and the actual reproductive system and process doesn't start until 5th grade. And there is always a family preview night. We do our best to advertise it well. The new 3rd and 4th grade standards won't go into place until next year. So we're currently working on that curriculum. But preview nights are always available, and parent permission slips have to be signed for students to participate in those classes. So hopefully I covered all of that. Just some comments. Count on Douglas County folks to advocate for being independent. Lone cowboys. I think Keith is right on about early outs.
Did somebody just say I was right?
Someone said it.
Pay raise for that person.
Are professional development days voluntary? No, they are not voluntary. But obviously we can't stop people from calling in sick or taking a personal day, but no, they're not voluntary.
Yeah, I think that, maybe people don't understand is our employees, as Shannon said, they're not voluntary. So if they don't attend, they either have to take a personal day or a sick day if they are sick or going to a doctor's appointment. So staff, teaching staff are given 2 personal days per year and 15 sick days per year. Sick days do accumulate. as do personal, up to a limit. And so there are ways for staff to take paid days off, but they have to take one of those days to not show up to work.
So, and then Leonard posted a link regarding studies about the impact of scanners on students, the weapon detections, and I will be glad to take a look at that and we'll take it into consideration. But our number one goal is to make sure that a weapon isn't getting into our schools. We want to keep our schools safe. Did I hear correctly that there are excessive call outs for teachers on Fridays?
No, and I guess I want to answer this carefully. I am in no way trying to villainize our employees that or insinuate that they are doing anything wrong. As my last answer said, there are ways for staff to take personal days, and if they're sick, there's sick days. I would just tell you that generally personal days are used more often around a weekend to extend it to a 3-day weekend. So if you looked at our data, I would just tell you that on Fridays, we would have a higher absentee rate. But again, I don't want that coming across as that anyone's doing anything wrong. They are using their leave within the contract. And in those situations where somebody is misusing their leave, obviously we would address it as their employer.
And our professional days are very well attended. That's
Yes.
rare that we have a lot of people out on a professional development day. And this person just wanted us to make sure we remembered that early outs on Fridays would not work for George Whittel as they're not in school that day. Are we going to go back to giving grades to the elementary students versus numbers? Mrs. Cronin Mack, do you want to jump in on that or?
Sure. So the Douglas County School Board of Trustees this last June of 2021 directed us to take a look at grading generally across the board. So that committee is attended by 3 members of the school board, and there are parents and teachers and administrators who serve on that committee. And so we've been meeting monthly this year, and they are working on creating consistency across the district. At this point in time, I don't see them making a recommendation to go away from using standards reference grading at the elementary level, but they could still change their mind, I suppose. But that has not been the conversation. The conversation has been more about how do we create more consistency from 3rd grade to 3rd grade, from 6th grade science class to 6th grade science class across the district. And so that's what our work has really been around in terms of the grading, so that we can communicate really well to parents and to students. And use grades in a way that talks more about what students are learning and demonstrating their knowledge about what they've learned and can do. And so our current system in the elementary is probably more robust in communicating that to parents than the old ABCDF system, which is fairly arbitrary.
Rami, do you want to talk just briefly on the surface level of our work moving to Empower that will allow parents to see real time where their kids are?
Yes. So we
Maybe
have
I just
also,
said it
yeah,
for you.
you did, but I'll just reiterate that we are in the process of developing a learning management system. A learning management system is similar to Google Classroom for those of you who have students who've been working in Google Classroom, but the system that we're working to develop for the 2022-2023 school year will allow parents to actually log in and see real time how students are performing on each of the different core content areas and standards that they're working on. Right now in Infinite Campus, as you may know, you're not able to do that. As a parent, you're only given information when that information is sent out to you. But this would be a live learning management system that allows parents to go in and see how their students are doing. And hopefully that'll really create a robust communication opportunity between parents and students in the elementary school around how students are performing.
All right, there was one comment about the appreciation of adding some weapons detection systems to keep our schools safe. And then a question around the proposed fourth grade new health standards. And will fourth grade parents have a preview night? Yes, they will. And yes, the current plan is boys and girls will be separated. That's how the curriculum is set up.
And again, just, I want to emphasize again that this is all, parents have to sign a permission slip. So if we don't receive a permission slip from from parents, then the kids are not able to attend that instruction. So I always end things with "so." I shouldn't do that.
I think we're caught up for a change here.
There's a comment there.
Yeah.
Shannon.
I have been at the school only 1 year, but I am so impressed with the dedication of the teachers and the staff. And I wanted to take this moment to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are blessed to have an amazing staff in the school district. It is easy being the leader of a district with this high a caliber of staff. So I appreciate them and I appreciate you recognizing that.
What is the budget for gifted and talented students and how many students currently participating? I don't have any of that off the top of my head. I doubt anyone does.
I don't
You want to
either.
reach out, if you want to send an email to us, Brian, if you would put actually Jeannie and Wendy's contact in the chat. Oh, although I don't think they can see that. So if you just want to reach out to the district, we will put you in touch with that information. So Mr. Brown, there was a question saying we didn't address the safety of the scanner technology. Will there be an opt-out process? First of all, we feel like the scanner has been vetted and is safe, or we wouldn't be utilizing the technology, but we will be working with our risk management. There could be obviously medical situations that arise that we would need to look at on a separate basis. Generally, we are not going to have an opt-out on that. But again, we would look at that on a case by case. And I know Mr. Brown, this question has come up recently, and we will be looking to adopt our policy. Yeah, to make sure we have it. Exactly. And so, we are trying to take it, slowly to make sure that we've got everything in order. For full disclosure, we were planning tomorrow to implement it for the first time, and we made a decision today that there are still some irons that we need to get out of the fire, and we're looking at that to make sure that, again, when we're ready or when we go live, that our staff is ready to be efficient in that process. For those that are coming into this a little bit late, generally, again, these systems will be used at the secondary schools only. They'll also be used at random events. And we would use them in a situation at elementary if we had a credible threat to a school. Then we might implement them at the elementary level, but that would be an extremely rare situation where we would do that.
Back on the hiring of teachers, and do we honor pensions and vetting from other districts? And do those transfer over? Just curious how that works.
So when I think even as maybe 6 years ago, when I came into human resources, the district only honored 5 years of out-of-state experience. By state law, we have to honor all years of experience within Nevada, but then it was up to districts to make a determination on what they would grant credit for from outside Nevada. Obviously, we've had to adapt those policies, and we've made some adaptation in conjunction with our teachers union to go up to 15 years so that we can be competitive. We know that we lost some candidates over the years because of that, and so we've tried to make some adaptions there. The other thing that the state of Nevada, and it's actually Nevada PERS, which is the Public Employee Retirement System in the state of Nevada. One of the things that, because of the shortage, we can apply through PERS for what's called critical shortage. So one of our first was we could not find psychologists. Unfortunately, I hate to report that we now have critical shortage on classroom teachers, which we would have never thought that would be possible. What that allows is that allows us to hire a retiree back into teaching. And so they would, in a critical shortage situation, they collect their retirement and they're not penalized for coming back to work. And then they collect a salary as well. And so we've had to do a lot of that, especially in the special ed world. But that is another means that that we have to try to fill some of our vacancies. We obviously have a commitment to try to find non-retirees, but that's not always possible, especially in some of our hard to fill positions.
All right, there's a comment in the chat. I feel like I need to say that I like the elementary grading system. As a parent of a first grader, I like knowing what we are striving for and where we are at the end of the grading period. And yeah, regarding the weapons detectors, thanks for looking at more thoroughly. Is this for all of the high schools, including George Whittel? They would be made available to any school event. They could be used at George Whittel, either of the middle schools, dances, school board meetings, any event sponsored by the school.
And so, yes, we will use them at Whittel. And, you know, again, we will have a schedule. You know, we don't have the capacity to use them every day. The way this will work is obviously whenever they're implemented, we need to do that in conjunction with our school resource officers. So whenever we do use the weapon detection system, there will be a sheriff's deputy in the immediate area. If the detection system goes off, the student will be taken to a secondary location just off to the side, and we will utilize a secondary search. And if we were to find a gun in a secondary search, that's why we want the police officer or the deputy immediately there to be able to quickly address that situation. So these systems are designed for metal density and the volume of metal. And so the question comes up a lot, are they going to catch vapes? Are they going to catch the small pocket knives, phones? No, they will not go off on those. They will go off on what we would consider mass casualty weapons, which would be a gun or a large knife. Unfortunately, what we found that was not originally a part of the conversations that we had is that our Chromebooks, because of the amount of metal in the hinge apparatus, there is enough metal in that it would trigger the detection. And so that's one thing that has delayed us a little bit is so when we use them, students will be trained to pull their Chromebooks out of their bags. They'll hand it to and then walk through. And so that's kind of been an adjustment we've had to make.
Next comments, while I feel that we disagree on this issue, I do wish to express my appreciation to the entire panel. Thank you. It's nice to be able to disagree and have civil discourse. We agree.
Now, Matt, I'm not sure what issue we disagree on, but that's okay. Maybe that makes it even better.
This is about the recordings. It is being recorded. Or is there a transcript that this parent could get to someone that wanted to attend?
We do post it on our website, so it will be available. Recording of this will be available.
Another comment. So glad you make time for these town halls. I encourage you to continue these discussions. It's very helpful. It's nice to be able to clarify questions that are out there in the community. So thank you, Lisa.
Lisa, thank you. Sometimes they look at me with crossed eyes at some of my brainchild ideas. So we do appreciate that they are valued.
Is there a plan to hire full-time administrators for the lake schools? I know that we are sharing between 2 to 3 schools and pretty fully covered with administrators up there.
So right now we staff the lake schools with a principal, a dean, AD, and a halftime VP. I know there is maybe a differing view of that, but at this point, I would never say that we don't constantly evaluate all of our schools for staffing. So I'm not going to say that it's not ever possible, but I at this point feel like that we are adequately staffed. But we do, for example, we've done a pretty significant staffing ratio we implemented last year. One of those cuts was at all of our elementary schools that were not Title I, that we were going to reduce the Secretary 1 to 5 hours a day. Where openings occurred, we went ahead and made that move. But what looks good on paper doesn't always look great in practice. And so over the course of the year, we've had the opportunity to evaluate that and made a decision that we needed to give some more time back to that position. So again, we're constantly evaluating. Another example is there was an expected cut in playground hours at Scarcelli. We always ask our administrators if they don't feel like we're staffing adequately to come plead their case. I would tell you that more times than not, I probably say no, but we do, that there are some compelling cases, and in the situation at Scarcelli, they were able to show that a reduction of 2 hours, while it might not seem that much, it didn't allow for adequate supervision on our playground, and so we made those changes.
I'm not seeing anything new in there for a minute.
There's a new one, Shannon.
I have a special needs child in the district. I don't ever recall receiving a permission slip for sex education when he was in elementary. Are the special needs kids included in sex education as well? And again, I've never received a permission slip or recall hearing about him receiving sex education. To the fullest of their ability, they should be included in any classes they would, or it should be a conversation at least between the parent and the case manager to make a decision if that's the best for them. I would reach out to that school. I mean, like I said, it would have been up to 5th grade and they have not taught it in 5th grade yet this year.
And I'll just add, I'm the father of 2 special needs kids, and we made a choice as a family that it might not be appropriate. We did receive the paperwork, but I would tell you that as a parent of a child, sometimes things are put in a backpack that sometimes may get missed by parents, and so I think it sounds like your child has moved on to the next level, whether that's middle school or high school, but to really communicate with the case manager that those important documents that you're being made aware that they're coming home, and then vice versa. When you send something back, my son often doesn't tell him that there's something in his bag that he needs to turn in, and so that communication is real key with your case manager. So I would encourage that, and then of course you can always reach out to us if you're having problems with that communication.
I think we've kind of talked about this already. What about resignations that occur mid-school year? How do we fill those spots? You might add to it, Keith, but they're evaluated. Every opening is evaluated, posted if it's still needed, and we try to recruit, but very often teachers are looking for their jobs in the fall and the spring, or spring and summer.
And I think, from a hiring standpoint, as a former HR director, we get lucky sometimes. We really get lucky, and somebody's just graduated from college, and we've made some amazing hires mid-year. But often we have to ask ourselves why someone might still be without a job. And, we are obviously of the opinion that we don't just hire anyone, that we have expectation no matter when the portion of the year is. And sometimes a long-term sub is a better option than hiring someone who does not have a good work history, or, may be coming from a situation that is not one that would be a good fit for the district. So we really do try, and it kind of goes back to, within the regular hiring cycle, we're pretty successful. Out when we start getting July, August, and anytime obviously during the school year, it becomes very, very challenging. So I think we've answered, follow up with the lack of administrative counselors once a week at Zephyr Cove, and our secretaries are also split between schools. What is the plan for full-time? Once again, between 2 buildings that are relatively close, we staff our lake schools with 2.75 hours of secretarial time. We just increased, we had a 5-hour position just vacate, and we've increased that by an hour. I had already talked about the fact that we have a dean, a principal, and a halftime VP. I will concede that our counselor, obviously we don't have a counselor up there. That is not as a result of the district not trying to find someone. And we have done our best to at least provide supplemental sources from our schools in the valley that can afford to give up their counselor one day a week. So
There's a question, what about full-time volunteers? Would they ever be asked to not be at the school? I am not,
now, well, I mean, obviously, if they did something inappropriate or were not following the expectations of a volunteer, obviously in that situation, we might ask someone. And again, you know, we have a process for our volunteers. It is all volunteers that are regular volunteers in our school have to be background checked every 5 years, and then invited into the school as well. So it's, you know, we don't have 50 volunteers sign up that want to volunteer at Minden and they just all show up whenever. Obviously, that's hard to manage. And so again, we have a lot of active volunteers. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know the context of this, of why, where it's going with, would they ever be asked not to be at the school? You know, I guess I could add on to that. You know, obviously in COVID situation, we were a lot more cautious of who else we brought into the building outside our normal staff. But we have fortunately got to the point where volunteers are welcome in our schools and are volunteering often.
unmuted. Okay. Our Douglas High class reunion's coming up. If we as a group wanted to make a donation to Douglas High School, like a new picnic benches or plant trees, who do we need to get approval from? And that, it's always been the site administrators when it comes to donations, and then for specific school sites.
So I encourage you to reach out to Mr. Rex at the high school. And I know that would be welcome. We could find a use for some donation, I'm sure, to honor the class.
And then the person with that last question about the volunteers said they could would email you directly. Well, now we're getting that awkward silence near the end. Starting to lose some of our attendees, so sure if
So
anyone
let's
has.
just, unless somebody will, I'll just kind of sign off. First of all, again, I really appreciate the time. Great questions, a broad range of questions as well. And so I do appreciate, I think at one point we had 66 people in attendance. So that is exciting. That shows engagement. The one thing I will just finish with as superintendent, there is, one of the things that I have had to deal with more and more is a lot of misinformation that is being spread throughout the community. Last night would be a perfect example of flyers going around that Douglas County School District was implementing sex education in grades, beginning in grade kindergarten. I would just ask as a community, I, as a parent, if I had seen that as well, would have been maybe appalled and up in arms and wonder what the world was coming to. If it sounds really crazy, I would ask you to pick up the phone and make some calls and ask those questions of us. Once again, I started tonight with transparency. We attempt to be as transparent as we can, and we appreciate when people pick up the phone and give us the opportunity to clarify issues, to ask questions. Is this really true? Rather than having things spread like wildfire across social media that once again, doesn't really do a lot to unite our community. It just creates division So I will end on that. I do see that I may have talked long enough to get one more question.
Why are we going beyond the state standards for fourth grade, bringing down a portion of fifth grade sex ed to fourth grade? I don't believe the materials we presented are doing that.
And, just in response to that, if, that would be, please reach out to Mr. Brown if you've got a concern that you're seeing something that may not make sense, please reach out to us and we can talk it through.
And I was going to say that, just to clarify, the current health standards were rewritten and reapproved by the State Board of Education in 2020. And so we've been working to realign our curriculum. So previously in this district, it is true that we were not teaching any family life below fifth grade, but those standards were rewritten. And so now it has been our response to make sure that we have materials to support those new standards.
And I may not have understood the question correctly the way I was reading it. So I apologize.
Our eyes are all looking down at the chat. All right, so I really am gonna sign off this time. So again, I appreciate you. I appreciate my staff for being here tonight and sharing their expertise. And as always, feel free to reach out either via email or phone call if you ever have any questions. So have a good night and thank you for all you do to support your children and to support our schools as well. Good night.
Yep. Thank you.